It's after Asara B'Tevis, which means that it's Shleishim Yom Lifnei. It's within 30 days of Yud Shvat, which the Rebbe calls in his letters Yom HaGodol VaKodesh, the great day and the holy day of Yud Shvat. Yud Shvat, of course, is the Histalkus Hilula. It's the Yortzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe. But what's more important to us, much more important to us, HaKorev Eleinu, is the Ascholos Anasiyas of the Rebbe, of our Rebbe. And I had a Malamed, his name was Rabbi Fuchs, Olav Shalom. When I was in his class, I was 10 years old. So when it came Yud Shvat, he verbringt with us about Yud Shvat, as much as you can tell a 10-year-old about such an inyan. And what he told us then was, for me, he said, Yud Shvat is a bittersweet day, because I knew the Frierdiker Rebbe. So on one hand, it's the beginning of the Rebbe's Nesias, and on the other hand, it has to do with a loss, with a chisaron, with a feller. But for you, he said to us children, yes, that you didn't know the Frierdiker Rebbe, so Yud Shvat for you was only a positive day, a freiliche day, the Hascholos Anasiyas of the Rebbe. And it reminds me of a sicha from the Frierdiker Rebbe, where the previous Rebbe talks about the Baal Shem Tov. That it's a Davar Yadua, it's well known, the Baal Shem Tov did not want to reveal himself, he didn't want to become a Rebbe, he wanted to remain a Nister. And he was pressured. A whole long story with many details and many aspects of how the pressuring came down, until Kvayachal he had no choice. And as he writes in his letter, on his 36th birthday, Chayel Tov Tzadik Dalad V'Niskalesi, I revealed myself. So the Frierdiker Rebbe calls it the Groise Heilike Glickliche Tag, the great and holy and fortunate day of the Isgalos of the Baal Shem Tov and the beginning of Chassidus, Chayel Tov Tzadik Dalad. Now, of course, what's ironic about it is that the Baal Shem Tov himself is so unhappy. The Baal Shem Tov himself so much does not want to do it. And yet the Rebbe calls it a groise heilige glickliche tag. Why? Because the Baal Shem Tov didn't want to do it. But for Kavana Sabriya and for the benefit of Klal Yisrael, it's the greatest thing that could have happened. And I guess on some level you could say the same thing about Yud Shvat. That it's a groise heilige glickliche tag. That the Rebbe began his Nesias. And as we all understand, the Rebbe's Nesias is Lariches Yomim V'Shonim Tevis, even today. And it's a groise and a heilige and a glickliche tag. And Rabbi Isaac Homler, like Zogen, it was a famous word from Isaac Homler, one of the greatest Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. And he said, when the Alter Rebbe sat in jail, hat dem gar nicht gefällt. He was missing nothing. He was sitting, he had visitors like the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid. In addition, he had what was in his mind the greatest chus of all, to pay, to be punished for the Torah of his Rabbeim, which gave him so much nachas ruach that it says in the Sipurim that he almost had kalesa nefesh amit. And it even says that he had big day Shabbos. He had a tichel which he used to big day Shabbos. Rabbi Isaac Holmes said that when the Alter Rebbe was sitting in jail, he was lacking nothing at all. So Rabbi Isaac said, who did Hashem do a favor for when he released the Alter Rebbe from prison? For the Alter Rebbe, it was so good in prison. And he answered, La Hashem Yeshua. The Eibush did himself a favor, Kvayach. If the Alter Rebbe had not come out of jail, how would the world appear? And this is a kolshkin v'kal v'chemer, ben b'nei shel kal v'chemer. How much more so, the Rebbe's Nesias, La Hashem Yeshua. The Eibush, however you word it, allowed that we should go through the experience that we went through 70-something years ago. And the answer to that unbelievable Helen Behester, which is probably the greatest tragedy in Jewish history in terms of loss of life, physical loss of life, was the Rebbe. The Deir HaShvi, the Rebbe, and his Avos Yisrael, and his Shturim, to bring Mashiach. I don't think it's even a question. Hashem did himself a favor. So we all get ready for Yud Shvat, before Yud Shvat. And of course, one of the things that we do is that we learn Basi Legani. The story with the Basi Legani, of course, is briefly that the last 5 years of the Frierdiker Rebbe's physical life, he stopped writing and saying original Maimorim. He had a stroke at the end of 1945, then Tafshin Hey. Kiyadua, a small stroke, a minor stroke. He was very ill prior to that, but he had a minor stroke, a minor setback. And after that, he continued saying and writing siches and writing letters, of course, but he stopped saying and writing original Chassidus, original Maimorim. And instead, they took Maimorim from the Russia years or from the Latvia years, which most people didn't have, and they reissued them, they redistributed them. The Rebbe and the Friedrich Rebbe, I'm not sure who did what parts, but between the two of them, the Maimorim came out. And they were given out as if they were original Maimorim. Seif Maimorim Tishrei, Tavshin Vav, Tavshin Zayin, Tavshin Ches, Tavshin Tes and Tavshin Yud, even though these Maimorim were once given out, us by us, word for word as we have them, with minor changes, but they were reissued as new Maimorim. Basi Legani was a Maimor that the previous Rebbe said in Tafresh Pei Gimel, Bashas Boyim B'Shalach. The way we have Basi Legani, it's 4 Maimorim. Originally it was 2 Maimorim, 2 Shabbos, Boyim B'Shalach. Each Maimir was twice the size of the Maimir as it was broken up in 1950, Tafshin Yud. And accordingly, the Rebbe added a prefix to the second part, HaYesheves Baganim. Otherwise, it's word for word the Maimir which came out in Pei Gimel. In addition, the previous Rebbe added Kitzurim, summaries, and our Rebbe added Ha'aros Amana Makemis. Now, of course, as we know, what was so extraordinary about this fact is that when this Maimor was given the first time in 1923, the Rebbe was in Ostov. Our Rebbe visited the Friedrich Rebbe. It was the second visit, as far as we know. The first visit was Sukkot, Chalamed Sukkot, and the second visit was Pashas Be'im B'Shalach, the winter time. And the Friedrich Rebbe said the Maimor which he would reissue for his Histalkus, which would become, of course, as the Rebbe would refer to it, the Tzavah of the Rebbe, the Shved, the Tzavah of the Friedrich Rebbe, and the inspiration for our generation. When the Maimor came out in 1950 in Tafshin Yud, it officially came out for Yortzeit. Yud Shvat, the Friedrich Rebbe Yortzeit for his grandmother, Rebbe Tzadivke, Yud Shvat. And Yud Gimel Shvat, the Yortzeit for his mother, Rebbe Tzadivke, who is buried in New York. So the Maimor was divided into 4. 5 Prakim for Yud Shvat, 5 Prakim for Yud Gimel Shvat, 5 Prakim for Purim, and 5 Prakim for Beis Nisim, which is the yard site of the Friedrich Rebbe's father. So essentially, it was the most critical yard site in the Friedrich Rebbe had, his parents and his grandmother, that were linked to the Maamar Basi Legani. And of course, the Maamar came out on Friday. The first half, the first 10 Prakim, came out on Friday. Shabbos morning, there was the Histalkus. The Rebbe Rayatz passed away. And my grandfather, Zaidi Shusterman, he was the typesetter at the time, told us that on Sunday, the day of the Levaya, the Rebbe was running up and down the steps, preparing for the Levaya. And he saw my grandfather, so he stopped and he turned to him and he said, typing. He had typed up the first 10 Prakim, and he was typing for the Purim Maimor. It was a stop. Because now that there was a Histalkus, there's no Hira, there's no instructions, so you have to interrupt, you have to stop. So he stopped. At the end of Shiva, the same week, the Rebbe turned to my grandfather a second time and said, Nu medaf trachten wegen drucken weiter, with a smile. We have to think about continuing to typeset, the print. So my grandfather said, I had a Rebbe right away. Within 7 days, the Rebbe stopped. In other words, the Friedrich Rebbe ended, and the Rebbe started. The Rebbe begins with right away. The Rebbe gave out the Maimor. They came out for Purim and for Beis Nissen. And as I mentioned, the Rebbe would refer to this Maamar Basi Legani as the tzavah of the Friedrich Rebbe, as the will of the Friedrich Rebbe. And the Rebbe would explore this Maimor, hafachba v'hafachba dekelaba. In this Maimor, you have everything that you need for our generation, for Deir HaShvi, for the 7th generation, as the Rebbe explained it, of course. There are letters from the Rebbe in the very beginning, where people would ask the Rebbe questions, and the Rebbe would answer any question you could ask. There's a remes for the answer in the Maamar Basi Legani. Like, for example, somebody asked about delaying a wedding. So the Rebbe said you shouldn't delay the wedding because in Perek Hey of the Maamar you have the idea of a hanalish tusei l'saba, the idea of chasana. So he said this is a remes that you should not postpone weddings. You know, the Rebbe saw this Maamar Basi Legani as an instruction manual for our generation. Now the Rebbe, of course, said the Maamar Basi Legani every single year. Beginning in 1951, Tafshin Yud Aleph, he said Maamar Basi Legani, which had 2 parts. Number 1, it was the mission statement for our generation. The first Basi Legani is not just a Maimer, it is the Maimer. And we learned it here, and it's up on the website in a number of classes. And the Teichen of the Maimer is Adi Avdei Rashvi, and Dir B'Tachtoinim, and going to where the Jews are rather than waiting for the Jews to come to you. And Atikra Vayikra Levayakri, and so on. So part of that first Maimer was a mandate, an instruction mandate for our generation. And a part of that Maimer was also a biur, it was a clarification, it was a commentary on the first Peidik of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maamar Basi Legani Achei. The following Yud Shvat 1952 Tafshin Yud Beis, the Rebbe again said Maamar Basi Legani, and it was a commentary on Peidik Beis, on the second chapter of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maamar Basi Legani. And the same thing continued. Every year, the Rebbe said another Maamar Basi Legani Achei. Sometimes he said 2 and even 3. And the Teichen of the Maimarim was a commentary on one of the Parakim of the Maamar Basi Legani of the previous Rebbe. So in Tafshin Lamed in 1970 he finished. So when it came 1971, Tafshin Lamed Aleph, no one was certain what was going to take place. And the Rebbe said again, Maamar Basi Legani Achei, and he explained Peidik Aleph a second time, explaining it differently than he did 20 years before. And then in Tafshin Lamed Beis he studied chapter 2, and in Tafshin Lamed Gimel he studied chapter 3, and so forth. Tafshin Memches, 1988. It was literally 12 days before the Histalkus of the Rebbitzin. So the Rebbe said Basi Legani Achei Sikala and explained Peidik Yud Ches, chapter 18 of the Maamar Basi Legani for the second time. And that was the end of the Rebbe's saying Maimarim. In Tafshin Memtes, the Rebbe did not say a Maamar, but he gave out Muga. He edited the Maamar from Tafshin Chavtes from 20 years before. In Tafshin Nun, again, he did not say a Maamar, but they prepared and edited the Maamar from Tafshin Lamed. And then in Tafshin Nun Aleph, again, the Rebbe didn't say a Maamar Basi Legani Achei Sikala, but he edited the Maamar from 20 years before from Tafshin Lamed Aleph. And in Tafshin Nun Beis, he again did not say Maamar Basi Legani, but he edited the Maamar from Tafshin Lamed Beis. So the Rebbe made it very clear that when they finished the second time around, which was 1990, Tafshin Nun, 40 years into the Nesias, they should start a third time. So according to that Cheshbon, it finished in Tafshin Ayin, 9 years ago. So in Tafshin Ayin Aleph, we started for the fourth time. And we learned Peidik Aleph and Peidik Beis. And this year, Tafshin Ayin Test, we're doing Peidik Test, the 9th Peidik of Basi Legani. But there's something exceptional about this year. And that is that people who know that for the first, 35 years approximately of the Rebbe's Nesias, the Rebbe edited very few of his Maimarim. Very few of the Maimarim of the Rebbe came out Mugad. There was a little Kuntris when I was a kid in the mid-70s called Kuntris Maimarim, which is, 100 pages, which had all the edited Maimarim of the Rebbe, all the Mugadik Maimarim of the Rebbe. Beginning in Tafshin Memvav in 85, 86, the Rebbe began a whole Seder of editing Maimarim, which became a Kviyas and continued until Tafshin Nun Beis. And parenthetically, Derech Hagav, it says in the Rishimis that in the Ershte Yaren, in the beginning of the Rebbe's Nesias, somebody asked the Rebbe about editing his Maimarim. So the Rebbe answered, now I don't have the time, sit kum in the Zeit. The time will come. And of course the time came. In the Memvav, Memzayin, those years, the Rebbe edited maybe 30 Maimarim a year. So there are very few edited Maimarim from the Rebbe from the first literally 35 years, except the ones that would be reissued and edited in the later years. Amongst the exceptions to that rule is Basi Legani Tafshin Yud Aleph, Basi Legani Tafshin Yud Beis, Basi Legani Tafshin Yud Gimel, and Basi Legani Tafshin Yud Tes, and then of course Tafshin Lamed Zayin, also the Rebbe edited, Basi Legani Tafshin Lamed Zayin. So one of the few Maimarim Basi Legani the Rebbe edited was this one. So we're learning this Maamar not only in lieu of a preparation for Yud Shvat, we're learning this Maamar in lieu of the Seder that we have to learn the Maimarim of the Rebbe that are Mugad. The Rebbe's edited Maimarim. We've done a bunch, I don't know how many we've done, 20 or 30 Maimarim we've done from the Rebbe's Maimarim. We did some very difficult Maimarim, very involved Maimarim, very askodic Maimarim. This is not necessarily the hardest Maamar, but it is an edited Maamar from the Rebbe. So we're in effect hitting two birds with one stone. We're learning a Maamar in preparation for Yud Shvat, and we're also learning a Mugadik Maimarim in our series of Maimarim of the Rebbe. So before we begin, just an overview of the Maamar Basi Legani. As I told you before, the Rebbe Zagazuz and our Rebbe referred many times to the Maamar Basi Legani of the Frierdiker Rebbe, of the previous Rebbe, as the tzavah, as the will of the Rebbe, Hira for our generation. The Rebbe stripped this Maamar to its bones. The Rebbe squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and got everything out of this Maamar. There's so many commentaries of the Rebbe on the Maamar Basi Legani, it's indescribable. And he argued and repeatedly argued and proved and showed and underscored how the ideas of this Maamar are Pashat Hira for our generation. So first, a brief overview of Basi Legani. It's not going to take us very long. A brief overview of Basi Legani. Basi Legani is a story, really. The story is that when Hashem created the world, He lived on earth. He was on this earth. Why? Because this world was a Gan Eden, this world was a paradise. This world was the purpose for the creation, Kavana Sabriya. There may have been higher worlds, but the Eibishter created all the worlds for the sake of this world. And therefore Hashem found Himself Chayachal on this earth. Then Adam and Chava did Navera, and the Eibishter left. Hashem went to the Rekiya Ha'alef, which of course is funny, because when you read the story in the Chumash, the impression that the Chumash gives you is not that the Eibishter left, but that Adam and Chava were kicked out of Gan Eden. They were thrown out of Gan Eden by Yegara Shavai Lekibas Adam from the garden, and He sent them out into the world. But Al Pipnimis on Yarim, of course, it's based on a medrash, the medrash on the pasuk Basi Legani Take, that it wasn't that Hashem kicked Adam and Chava out of Gan Eden, but that Gan Eden was kicked out of this earth. Gan Eden rose up. Te'elam HaYetzira, as it's written in Sfarim. And this world became Asiyah, Taruvas Tevara. So Hashem was here and He left. Why did He leave? Because of an Aveda. What's the touch? Basi Legani. Basi Legani doesn't mean I have come. Basi Legani means I've come back a second time to my place of shelter from before. Legnuni lemokam shayikri betchila. When did He return? He returned by Har Sinai. When Hashem gave us the Torah, it's mevatel l'gezeira ben yanim metachtenim. Like it says in the Gemara and in Chazal, Posca zu Amosam, Chedus mi malach hamoves. The Jewish people achieved such a level of holiness that they were worthy of the Shekhinah living on this earth as it had been before the original sin. So Basi means I have returned. Then what happened? They made an egel. Now here the Maimorim don't all agree. Some Maimorim given one eifin, other Maimorim given another eifin. But at least one of the eifanim is that when Hashem came back down to earth, He was supposed to live on earth. When man sinned with the golden calf, Hashem couldn't live on earth. But instead of leaving, He says, "V'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'seicham." The first time around, Adam and Chava were living in Eden with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They didn't have any left. The second time around was after Matan Torah. They'd already given us the Torah. So the Jewish people sinned again. He said, I'm not leaving. V'asu li mikdash, make me a house. If I can't live in the streets, if I can't live everywhere, at least I'll live in my own home. Now, of course, there are other versions, especially those opinions who hold, like Rashi says in Pashas Kisisa, that his opinions who hold that the commandment for Asul Mikdash v'Shechanti B'Seichem was given in the beginning of the 40 days, God, before the Chet Eitz Hadas. So you have to have different understandings of this. But according to those opinions who hold that the commandment to build the Mishkan was after the Eibishter was, so to speak, kicked out of earth again because of the Chet HaEgel, so Asul Mikdash means I don't want to leave, so make me a house, I'm going to live in this house. This is more or less the pshat in the pasuk Basi Legani as it's explained in the Medrash. So the obvious question is, when you hear this story, ask a simple question. As they say in Yiddish, Tashena Maise, it's a beautiful story. Aber Maida Hava, let bygones be bygones. Who's in the business of telling stories? Torah is Lashon Hera. Torah teaches us a lesson. Torah doesn't tell us stories. What's the relevance of a story of Him being here and Him leaving and Him coming back and then not being able to stay all over, so they have to build Him a home? It's a story. And therefore you have a Maamar. And what the Maamar says basically that Basi Legani Achei Sikala is not only a story, it's also an instruction. How so? Because Basi Legani means Hashem returned and lived in a house. We have the mandate to expand that home of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to encompass the entire earth. So Basi Legani Achesi Kala is qualified by V'asa Lemikdash V'Shechanti B'Seichem. And we have a duty, we have an achrayis, we have a job, we have a shlichus to expand the V'asa Lemikdash V'Shechanti B'Seichem to encompass the whole world. And therefore, Basi Legani is not a story, it's an instruction. Hashem is here. And by himself, he's in a little space, in a bias. And the Kavanah Sabri is to make the whole world into that bias. So you need to know how to satisfy, how to fulfill, how to realize the commandment, the instruction, the Hira B'Chaim in Basi Legani. And that's the spirit of the Maamar Basi Legani as the Rebbe presented it. That it's not about what was, it's about what's going to be. That we have to make the whole world a home for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not only the Beis HaMikdash. So in short, the Maamar Basi Legani is an instruction manual. It's an instruction manual. It's how do you build a house for Hashem. Not how you build a house for Hashem that was built, that's described in the Chumash and in the Navi and Chazal. But to expand that home, to encompass the whole world, this is our avodah, this is our job. And you have to know how that home must be built. And that's the Hira of Basi Legani. So the Basi Legani tells how to build a house, how to build a home for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And of course, how to build a home for HaKadosh Baruch Hu is predicated on how the original home was built for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Beis HaMikdash. Now I just want to throw something in, which is a bit of a wrench, a bit of a confusion that appears in many of the Maimarim of Basi Legani, which is that when you talk about building the Eibishter home, there's two different things. A, building the home, and B, serving Hashem within it, bringing the karbanos. And in some Maimarim, the Rebbe proposes that the building itself is done by tzaddikim, and the karbanos brought in the Beis HaMikdash once the home is built is done by us. But like I said, there's contradictions in Maimarim, they're not all the same, so I'm just throwing that out there to give you another aspect of the comprehensiveness of the Maimarim Basi Legani. So when the Rebbe approaches the question of building Hashem a home, there's 2 points, 2 basic points. The first point is how you do it, and the second point is who does it. How do you build a home for HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Iskafia ishapcha. You want to build a home for Hashem, you can't do it in holiness and in removal. You do it by engaging with material world and material things. And iskafia v'sitrachre, you bend and you transform the inyanim of this world from klipa into kedusha. That's how you make a home for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this means in the life of a person that our avodas Hashem, which expands the Beis HaMikdash from the tiny little area in Har HaMoriah to all of Yerushalayim and to all of Eretz Yisrael and to all the Aklimim, on the whole world, depends on our iskafia ishapcha, how we in our own lives engage with the physical world and bend it and transform it from klipa into kedusha. In this notion of iskafia ishapcha, that you build Hashem a home not by being holy and removed from the world, but by struggling to bend and to transform klipa into kedusha, you have 3 examples. One example is from an activity. The second example is from a word. And the third example is from the letters that comprise a word. The first example is from karbanos. That a karban is dafka an animal. And of course it says in Chassidus, it says in Likutei Torah, Adam ki yakriv mikem, that when a person brings a karban, first of all the karban is himself. And second of all, mikemu b'cham adavar toli, it's entirely in our hands to bring a karban. And the whole idea of a karban is take the animalism which we possess and use it in the avodas Hashem, and then you have the transformation of animal into person. Rav Tfu is b'kei echsher. This is chapter 2, Perek Beis of the Maamar Basi Legani. Then you have the second example, and the second example has to do with atzei shitim, the boards that were used for the building of the walls of the Mishkan were made from wood, which is called atzei shitim, and shitim shadish is the word shtus. So here the analysis is not of the material that you're bringing the karban from, but from the name of the word, of the material, shitim. And the Rebbe explains in chapters 3, 4, and 5 that there's a concept called shtus de liyumazeh, shtus of kedusha, shtus of klipa. And the avodah is to be mahapach shtus de liyumazeh into shtus de kedusha. When a person goes in the middle, they can stay in the middle. But when a person goes away from the middle to one side, so then they can't go back to the center and expect to stay there, because once they leaned off the center in one direction, they already have a netiyah, a leaning. So in order to compensate for that netiyah to the left, you have to have a netiyah to the right. Instead of shtus shalamata menaseich, it has to be a shtus lamayla menaseich. This is the second illustration of how you build a home for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You take shtus de liyum hazeh and you transform it to shtus de kedusha. And this is chapters 3, 4, and 5. Gimel Dal Denei. Then comes the third example. And the third example is Prokim Vov and Zayin and Ches and Tes, which is this year's Pedic, of course. Which is, they have to take sheker and transform it into Kedesh, which is the name of the boards that were made for the Mishkan from the Yatzei sheet. But here the Rebbe doesn't analyze the word, sheker, he analyzes the individual letters. He explains that Shin is an ace of Kedusha, and that Kuf and Reish are Asvend is Chaziu, Al Sitra Bisha Inun, they're letters of Klipa, it says Nagdomas Hazeir. And he explains that similar to the Reish is the Dalad and similar to the Kuf is the Hey. And you have to transform the klipa of Dalid, of Reish into Dalid, and the klipa of Kuf into Hey. You heal, you correct the klipa of Reish, make it into a Dalid by doing two things. Number one, you add a left leg to the Dalid. And number two, you put a little yud behind the back of the Dalid to change it from a Reish to a Dalid. By adding something to the Reish, it becomes a Dalid. And similarly, you have to change the kuf to a hey. But in changing the kuf to a hey, you don't have to add anything, you have to take something away. Because the kuf is the same as a dalit, as a hey, pardon me. It has a line on top, a line to the right, and a line to the left. The difference is only that the line to the right extends lower than the line. You have to remove the aspect of the kuf, which is beneath the line, so that the two legs should be of the same height. And that's called transforming sheker into kedesh and into kesher. And this is prakim, like I said, Vav, Zayin, Ches, and Tes, sort of. Once the Rebbe says how you build a home for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, iskafia seter achara, iskafia ishapcha seter achara, and he gives the three examples of karbanis and shtus and making sheker into kedesh and kesher. The Rebbe moves on to the second basic point of the Basi Legani, which is who does it. Once we establish what needs to be done, we must establish who needs to achieve it. And the Rebbe said that this is achieved through the tzivos Hashem. And that's the Pedic Yud of the Maamar Basi Legani, and the whole Pekin, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, all the way to Tchas and Yutes, he's talking about the tzivos Hashem. And of course, the marshal of tzivos Hashem means simple soldiers. You have an army, and the army has a king, and then it has generals and all kinds of officers. But the bottom line is, the soldier actually goes and fights and wins the war, the Melchemes Nitzachim, to bring Mashiach Tzidkeinu, is the common foot soldier. So the Rebbe says that this avodah of making this home, this whole world of Beis HaMikdash to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and expanding the Beis HaMikdash from the tiny little space it has on the Har HaMoriyah to all of Yerushalayim and to all of Eretz Yisrael and to the whole world, is achieved through the tzivos Hashem. They have to take instruction from the king. They have to take instruction from their generals, but the instructions come from the generals. The actual work, the soldiers, the common foot soldier has to do. So the Rebbe discussed the process of how the common soldier wins this war, and he mentioned the idea of bizbuz ha'etzres. That when a king is fighting a war, if the purpose of fighting the war is for profit, so he is shekel, schara, keneged of seid, how much he's going to lose and how much he's going to gain. It's called the Melchemes Lishlel Shalol V'Lavos Veis. But then there's something called Melchemes Nitzachim. Melchemes Nitzachim means a war that you can't lose, because if you lose, you stop existing. A war for survival. When you have Melchemes Nitzachim, there's nothing that you don't do. You pull out all the stops. And the Rebbe mentions several things that a king will do when he's fighting a Melchemes Nitzachim, which are very, very extraordinary and not typical of a king. The first is Machnis es atzmei betachsisei melchama. He doesn't trust his generals. He himself engages in leading the war from the front. The king gets personally involved in fighting the battle. That's number one. And number two, mevazbeis kol ha'eitzreis she'asru aveisav aveisav. He takes treasure, which has been held and hidden away from his many generations before, all of his ancestors, that no one has ever seen. and certainly no one has had the opportunity to dispense of them, to waste them, to spend them. And he takes all of this treasure and he sells it, and he's mevazbez. He gives it out in almost a reckless way, because when you have to win a war, you pull out all the stuff. And then the third thing the Maamar says, and this is the most shocking of all, Mashle chayav meneged, the king sacrifices his own life, so the war should be won. So the Frierdiker Rebbe brings this concept called Milchemes Nitzachon, a war that you can't lose, because if you lose, you disappear. It's a war for survival. And it's obvious that this war for survival is the war of bringing Mashiach. In other words, it's the war of the war of making this whole world a home for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he adds, when you're fighting such a battle, you do three things. And he begins to explain, and the Rebbe goes off on a very, very long explanation to explain mystically what does it mean treasure. With a long Kabbalistic explanation of Ein Seif L'Mayla Din Kesel L'Mata Din Tachlis, which I'm not going to review. But the Nekuda is that Oitza means a very, very deep level of godliness, which the Eibishter distributes to help win the Milchama. And that's the second half of the Maamar Basi Legani. How the Tzivos Hashem are winning the war with the support of the king, and with the largesse of the king, and with the life of the king himself. And the Arich is, the discussion which takes up most of the body of the second half of Basi Legani, is the meaning of the word Eitzer L'Mayla. And that's Basi Legani. The first half describes how you make a building, basic mikdash for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the iskafia ishapcha, using three examples. And the second half is who achieves it, dafka de tzivos Hashem. Now, just as I'm talking to you, it resonates with me. It rings so real. As the Rebbe explained hundreds and hundreds of times, that this is the tzivos Hashem is us. And building the Beis HaMikdash, the iskafia ishapcha, is the avoid of our generation, specifically the avoid of shlichus. To go to where you're needed, not where you want to be. And to be mahapech shtuzdul yumas in the koch for nefesh abamis in that place, and bring it back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To find a yid who may be lost in Pina Nidachas and teach him Aleph Beis, like it says in the Maamar, in the first Maamar of the Rebbe, and to gather sparks. And of course, in order to effect this successfully, this bizbus kol ha'etzes, there's a dispensing of all treasure, which is the Rebbe giving all the koiches, all the Chassidus, all the koiches that we have and that we need to make a dirle yisbarach b'tachtein. This is a summary of the whole Maamar Basi Legani from the Frierdiker Rebbe. But this year, Tafshin Tes is Peirik Tes. And Peirik Tes is sort of at the end of a discussion. It's a pretty short Peirik. As I said earlier, the Rebbe has been discussing the idea of Sheked, that Shid is the Ace of Kedusha, and Reish and Kuf are Aces of Klipa. Reish is opposite the Dalid, and Kuf is opposite the Hey. And I already mentioned that to make the Reish Kedusha, you have to add something to it. To make the Kuf Kedusha, you have to take something away from it. So in Peirik Tes, the Rebbe Rayatz is doing two things. But not in this order. I'm changing. I'm saying something different than he says in the Maamar. The way it's the order of events. Number one, Peirik Tes says that in order to effect this building of the Beis HaMikdash, or the iskafia ishapcha, you have to transform the kuf into a hey. That's one of the points in this Peirik. You transform the kuf into a hey. Gar chayas kona, which in our Maamar, the Rebbe's version of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maamar, from Tafshin Tes is in Peirik Vav. And the second point is that once you transform the kuf into a hey, and the reish into a dollar, so instead of sheker you have keresh, and it becomes atzei shita meimdim. When you transform klipa into kedusha, you have a certain property, a certain mile, a certain special inyan, which is called amida, standing. And standing means that it never changes. Standing means it goes from the lowest level to the highest level. Standing means with a great firmness, a great firmament, and so on. So we're going to learn the Maamar Basi Legani. We're not going to do it in one night. We'll do it in a couple of classes. But we're going to start now, after all of these introductions. And bear in mind that we're learning Peirik Tes. And again, how did I present Peirik Tes to you? When I'm deliberately presenting it to you differently than the Maamar does. Because I think that in terms of sequence, in terms of Seder, L'Cheda, this comes first and this comes second, even though the Maamar is written differently. Perek test number 1 finishes the discussion of the transforming of sheker into kedesh by saying you have to change the kuf into a hey, gar chayas kone. And when you change the kuf into a hey, you have atzishit meimdim. You can stand on both feet. And you have the ma'ila of amida, which is the body, which is the bulk of this maimer, which is based on a considerable portion of the Maamar Basi Legani from the periodic Rebbe Perek test. So now, without any further ado, I've spoken for over half an hour. Let's learn the Maamar. I'm going to learn tonight the first Perek, which is the summary of the first 8 Perakim, and then we're just going to learn Perek Vav. Why am I going to learn straight Perek Vav? Because as I presented it to you, even though the Maamar has a different order, but as I told you a minute before, the Maamar is doing 2 things. The Friedrich Rebbe's Maamar is doing 2 things. It's finishing the discussion of transforming sheker to kedesh by changing the kuf into a hey. And then most of the Perek tells you what happens after. After you've successfully transformed the kuf into a hey, then you have atzishitim eimdim. So although in the previous Rebbe's Maamar, atzishitim eimdim is the beginning of the Perek and the end of the Perek, and Ga'ar Chayas Kona, transforming Klipa into Kedusha, the Kuf into Hey, is the middle of the Perek. I'm teaching it to you in this order because I think it's much easier to learn. Hashem Yechaper Ba'adi Im Shagisi. So let's go. Okay, Basi Legani, Tofshin Yotes. And I'm reading Pashat inside on the first page. So it says in the Pasuk, Basi Legani Achesi Kala. Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I have returned to my shelter, to my resting place, my sister, my bride. My sister goes on the Eibishter, and my bride, my Kala, goes on the Eibishter. The sister of the Eibishter and the Kala of the Eibishter. In other words, it goes on us. Basi Legani is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem says, I've come back. And who is he telling it to Achesi Kala? So the Friedrich Rebbe, whose yard is Yud Shvat, explains. In the Maamar which he gave out for his Histalkos Hilula, because even though originally the Maamar was given out for the yahrzeit of his grandmother, once he passed away, the Rebbe said that the Rebbe has a idea and everything. He knows what's going to be, and he therefore knew for sure what was going to be Yud Shvat. So when he gave out the Maamar, he meant how it's connected to him also. Based on what says in the Medrash on the words Basi Legani Lignuni. Lignuni means to my shelter, but specifically it means L'makoim Shahaya Ikri B'tchila, a place that Kvayachal the Eibish's Ikir was, then it went away, and by Matan Torah it came back. The Ikir Shechina B'tachtoinim Hois, when Hashem created the world, Ikir Shechina, the highest Madrega of Shechina, was in the lowest world. Now Ikir Shechina means the highest level of Shechina. But Shechina means Shechenas Mislabeshet. Shechina means godliness which has to do with the world. But then in godliness that have to do with the world, there's many levels, and Ikir Shechina is the highest level of godliness that has to do with the world. But in other places it's when Ikir Shechina means Atzmas Amhus, but Ikir Shechina B'tachtoinim Hois. When Hashem created the world originally, the world was perfect. And perfect means that not only was everything the way it's supposed to be, but the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was manifest in this world as it's meant to be. But then, there was an asir of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And then there were subsequent avedas v'chatoyim shel yachad, the subsequent sins. They affected that. Silk was a shechina mulmat. Olamah, the shechina departed from a lower level to a higher level, the Rekiah Hazayin, to the 7th heaven. Adam Arishan caused the shechina to leave from Ares to the Rekiah Ha'alef, and Enish from Rekiah Beis to Gimel, and so forth and so on. But there are Mabel from the 3rd to the 4th, there are Flagga from the 4th to the 5th. The Medrash lists 7 Avedas, and each Aveda caused the Shechina to depart until the Rekiah Shvi. And then it says, V'atzadikim, the Avedas of the individual people who were tzadikim through their Avodah. Him Shuychos the Shechina Mumayla proceeded to bring the Shechina back down. Das Chol Asam Shachai Dami Avram. The first one to bring it back down was Avraham Avinu, Shehu Hayarish, and he was the first. He brought him down from the highest heaven to the heaven which is second to the highest. And Yitzchak from Vav to Hey, and Yaakov from Hey to Dalet, and then whatever it is. Levi from Dalet to Gimel, and then Kahas from Gimel to Beis, and Amram from Beis to Aleph, and then Moshe from Aleph to Rekiah Lamata Baretz. The 7 tzaddikim from Avram until Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu comes along that he is the 7th. And all 7s are favored, are beloved. And he lowered it from the first Rakia, from the heaven closest to the earth, into this world. And of course, you know the diak that the Rebbe says in the first Maim. It doesn't say Kol HaChavivin Shviyin, it says Kol HaShviyin Chvivin, which means that you're special if you're the seventh, not by any choice of your own. If you happen to be the seventh, in quotations, you happen to be fortunate because of the virtue, the fact that you turned out to be seven is just one of those things that seven is beloved. And once the Eibusha came back into this world at Har Sinai, and he gave us the Teda, Lamesha, Nemar, Mesha Rabbeinu was instructed for Asuli Mikdash V'Shachanti B'Seicham. Now that Hashem came back to earth in the times of Mesha Rabbeinu, Hashem said, I need a place to live. Make for me a sanctuary and I will live there. Now, again, I want to clarify, there's different opinions. The Rebbe has a Sikh and Chelik Vav also, Pashas Truma. 3 Shitas. When the commandment for building the Beis HaMikdash was given and when the Beis HaMikdash was built proper. According to the opinion that Moshe Rabbeinu was told to build the Mishkan in the first 40 years or even before, so the building of the Beis HaMikdash had nothing to do with Naveda. It was simply that the Eibush had to come back into this world. But according to the opinions that he was told to build the Beis HaMikdash in the last 40 years, last set of 40 years, it's arguable that if not for the Chet, Hashem would not have needed a house. The whole world would have been his house. But we're not going to go into those 2 Eifanim. But there are these 2 Eifanim. Says the Rebbe, the Kipshutei Koi, simply speaking, this commandment, it means to bring Hashem down into this world. It's also indicated in the Kimai Merazal. And this is a Maimon Azal from Achreinim, from whatever it is, from the Alshich. It doesn't say in the house, it's in them, plurally, which is translated to mean inside each individual Jew. So even though the commandment was to make him a building, but it doesn't say it says make me a building shall dwell amongst them, meaning to say the building is only a beginning. And the end is an expansion of the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the whole world until it's B'chol Echad V'Echad Yisrael. And therefore, like I said in my introduction, Basi Legani is not just a story, my Dahava it's a manual for instruction of how to build this expanded premises for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ad Kan Teichen Perek Aleph. What we said so far is a summary of the first Perek. Now the Rebbe makes no reference here to the second Perek, which is about Karbanis. He immediately moves on to the discussion of chapters 3, 4, and 5 about Shtus. And he continues. And I'm going to guesstimate 10 lines into the Maimer at the beginning of the line. Accordingly, since Moshe Rabbeinu Hashem commanded him Vasali Mikdash, he explains in the Maimer the reason for why the Mishkan. And the writer brings the Lashon HaGabara. Mishkan is Mikdash, and Mikdash is Mishkan. The Mishkan is a Kedusha, and the Mikdash is a Shechina. Right, we know there's 2 levels. Shechina is the lower level, and Kedusha is the higher level, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The mobile house of God is called Mishkan, and the Beis HaMikdash is called Mikdash, which is a higher level. So the Gemara says you should know the Mishkan is also a Mikdash, both levels, Shechina and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Beis HaMikdash is also Mishkan, the lower level and the higher level. So the Rebbe says that Mishkan, Ikri, Mikdash, and Mikdash, Ihi, Mishkan. Says the Rebbe, Haya, Me'atze, Shitim, is made from a wood, from a board that's called Shitim. That's the name of the wood. But we derive something from the meaning of that word. The Shitim is Meloshan Atah. The word Shitim means to lean. That's written in the Pasuk, Shatu Ha'am. It means people spread out to go look for man. Now, this is very, very interesting. The Friedrich Rebbe brings the Lashon you have in Kuntas Hamayin also. Right? Kisiste ishte, tot midarak yatznias. That the word shita means to go off the middle path, and it brings the eye from Saita. And as we all know, the Rambam and the newer editions of Rambam that are based on Kisvei Yad, they write Saita, not Samach Vav Tes Hey, but Sin Vav Tes Hey, because the shaders, the word Saita is Shtus. But the Rebbe doesn't want to mention Adav Alei Teivan Yidden, so he brings Shatu Amalakto by the man. Also the idea of spreading out, of going away from your place, but not Chas V'Sholem in Aveda, but collecting man. From the middle path, which is the correct path. What happens when you go off the middle path? You have to fix, but you can't fix by going back to the middle path, because that leaning becomes an always problem. So the Rebbe says, when would a person lean in an inappropriate I'm sorry, I skipped one line. Sheyeshna bebezei fanim. There's two types of leanings. You have hatoya mederach hamitzua legreya, leading off the middle path to the negative. V'hatoya mederach hamitzua leteven, leading off the correct path to good, which means higher than seichel. Shtuz the gedush. Shatoya legreya, who leaning off the path of the negative is kemaim, as others written in the Gemara. Another mever aveda elam kei nichnas beiruach shtuz. That no human being in his right mind will do an Aveda. Why? Because no human being in his right mind wants to come cut off from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a terrible thing. So why does the person do an Aveda? So the answer is Ruach Shtus. He becomes stupid, loses his mind. And of course, one of the great syndromes of the Ruach Shtus is the famous expression, Oidenu b'yaduse, I'm still a good Jew, I'm still virtuous, I'm still righteous. And it's a tragedy that a person thinks you can do an Aveda and still be a good Yid, but you wouldn't do the Aveda without that temporary insanity. You would never do an Aveda b'shat nefesh, boldly and without any inhibition. Because a Yid can't do an Aveda unless he's affected by Shtus. And therefore, Shtus, this folly which led a person to do an Aveda in the first place, Shu Shtus de Elam, it's the foolishness of the world, Vashtus, the Liyuma, then the foolishness of Klipa, Tzarech, Lahapech, Lebechinas, HaGedushim, must be transformed into holiness. We call it in the Chabad culture today, Shtuz the Kedush. Shtuz the Kedush means to act in a super rational way, higher than Seichel. And of course, the basis for anybody to act higher than Seichel is the iskafia to the Rebbe. And the iskafia to the Rebbe gives a koyach to act in a way of Shtuz the Kedush. Vezehu. And of course, this, as I just mentioned to you, this is Prakim Gimel Dal Denei. Ishapcha. The bending and transforming from klipel into kedusha in the realms of shtus is Iker Avedas HaMishkan u'Mikdash. It's one of the primary Avedas of the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash. Shayedeis, and that through doing this work of transforming shtus l'yumas in the koch from nefesh hapamis into kedusha, nase v'shachanti b'seicham, the Shechina rests in this world. She Iker Shechina b'tachtenim, the Iker of Shechina, whatever Iker means, should be in this lowest world. Basi Legani, Nagnun Hashem is going to return. So Basi Legani is not only a what's happened, it's a what's happening. And where are we going? And we're going through the Avodah iskafia v'ishapcha to bring in Mashiach and building the third Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbe now continues and he references Prakim Vav Zayin Ches. V'apizam avayir gam b'hamayim, according to the Maimed also explains. And again, here's my words now. In addition to explaining Karbanos, which is the hafich of the Behema, into Adam with the milas of Behema, and in addition to the mile of transforming Shtuz the Ummah and the Shtuz the Gedush, there's also the Avodah of transforming Sheker into Keresh. But in this case, we're not talking about the actual Sheker, we're talking about the word Sheker. We're not even talking about the word Sheker, we're talking about every letter individually. The Maimon continues and explains that when they actually took these boards that were called Shittim and made them into the boards for the Beis HaMikdash, the name became Keresh, crushing. And the Rebbe says right away, which you have taken from Baal Shem Tov, Shekol Hashem B'Teira, all names in the Teira B'Diuk are very precise. Umatin Umatechin in Yonam, and the name has to do with the substance of the he or it that carries that name. So when you take Shtuz the Kedusha, Shtuz the Yomazeh, and you break it and you form it into an Oren and into an Amud, into a Keresh or a Kesher, for the Eibishter's Beis HaMikdash, you're transforming Klipa into Kedusha. The Hinei Ha'oith is the Keresh Emesius Sheker. The word Keresh, which means a board for the Beis HaMikdash, the same letter as the word Sheker, which is a lie. Veisius Kesher. Behind it translates the Rebbe. Hashem Sheker, the Elam, the world is a lie. The world is a lie. Tzarech lahapcham, you have to transform them. V'lasais mehem kirshei mishkan, make boards for the Mishkan, and when you make boards for the Mishkan, you're destroying the Klipa and transforming the Klipa into Kedusha. Bechinas kesher, we tie it to the Eibishter. Hainu. Let me read that line again. Hainu. Hashem yasheka de Eila, for the falsehood of the world. Tzarech lahapcham, you have to transform them. V'lasais mehem kirshei mishkan, make boards for the Beis HaMikdash. Bechinas kesher. Which means lekasher kolin yonei ha'elam, to attach everything in this world b'shchino u'b'ikashchina. The madrega of alakus called shchina nikashchina. Shupnimi v'atzmas einitzav. And here Taket said that shchina is not malchus neintzaf, it's the lowest level of alakus, as it says bepashas in the first Maamar, but it means atzmas einitzav, which is a tzarachin unto itself. And then the Rebbe concludes, the Rebbe Rayatz explains specifically ois kuf and reish, ve'ech sheshinegna b'kedusha, you have hey and dalet. Vashet tzorech lahavcham, you have to transform the klipa mei ha'oisis k'mei sheheim ba'asfen diziyufa, from the way they are letters in a world of ziyuf, of falseness, linyane teiva kedusha, the matters of holiness. And the Rebbe concludes, Okamavuer Kalanal, as all of this was explained by Riches at length, Besif Maked in the first 8 chapters. So the Rebbe here has maybe not even 20 lines, and it's a summary of 8 Perek. What happens now? It's going to explain the 9th Perek. Now the 9th Perek has 2 points. And again, I'm going to teach you the 2 points in the opposite order, or at least not in the same order that the letter does, that the Maamar does. So first we're going to talk about how you b'mavatal the klip of kup, make it into a hay, which is not in the beginning of Perek Tes. Then we're going to talk about what happens once you transform the kuf into a hay, and you made it into a mishkan, a mikdash, la yizbarech. What happens afterwards? And here the focus is going to be on the word oimdim, amida, as you'll see later on in the Maamar. So I'm going to ask you a favor. I want you to turn all the way until the bottom of page Samach Tes, which is Sif Vav. Now, I don't know for sure whether what I'm doing is correct. Obviously, if I didn't think it was correct, I wouldn't do it. But of course, shkiyas mi yavin. And the toichin of what we're going to do now is learn the first concept, which is negate the Perek Tes, which is the breaking of the klipa of kuf and making it into a hay. Breaking the klipa of dalid is different, of reish is different, because you have to add something. Breaking the klipa of kuf, you take something away, make it into a hay. So we're turning to Perek Vav and we're going to read. Vehine. Mamshech b'hamaymer bebir haremez the eis kuf, the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, in Perek Tes, in part, or explains the idea of the letter kuf and how it's representative of klipa. And you have to transform klipa into kedush. How do you explain? How kuf is klipa, says the Rebbe Asherag, le'asmolis, the left leg of the kuf, nimshech ad lamata, extends lower than the line. The line represents a limit. The line represents kedusha, and going lower than the line means ragla yerdis, you're going down into a place of death. The bekolosu, in general, the idea of removing the left leg of the hay, which is really the iskafia of ishapcha about which this Maamar speaks. The idea of removing the left leg of the hay so the 2 legs should be equal is called ga'ar chayas kana. The word kana means a 1-legged reed, I suppose. Kana means a reed. But we focus on the kuf of the letter, of the word kana. Chayas means the life which is given to klipa, the life which is given to the kuf. And ga'ar means to shout, means to steal from the kana, which is klipa, its life. First you have to steal the chayas kana, then you have to steal the kana itself. And by doing so, you're transforming klipa into kedusha, kuf into hay. So the Rebbe says the inyan kanahu, the notion of kana is kana arach shemshachamata. It's a long reed which goes very, very low. Says the Rebbe, who, and you should know this is called the char de klipa, the masculine klipa. The kana itself is the klipa of zachar. Then it says v'chayas kana is nuk for the klipa. The life of the kana would be the feminine aspect of klipa, which is malchus the klipa shemakabelas me'adachar. So in the word ga'ar chayas kana, you have 2 klipas. The essence of the klipa is called kana. The involvement of the klipa is called chayas kana. And the Rebbe calls them zov and nukva of the yom hazeh. Says the Rebbe v'tarach la'achrisam, and the kuf needs to be uprooted. The zeh ga'ar chayas kana, shouting at chayas kana means uprooting the klipa. So the Rebbe now says 2 lines from the bottom. We have 2 ideas. The first idea is kana. Kana means the klipa of kuf. And then you have chayas kana. Chayas kana means the feminine aspect of the klipa of kuf. And you have to remove the klipa, which is kana, and the feminine klipa, which is chayas kana. So the Rebbe says 2 lines from the bottom of Vedas Adam. What is kana and what is chayas kana in avodah? So he need char the klipa, masculine klipa is midesrois alei tevis, is bad attributes. In other words, masculine klipa is a thing. It's a thing of badness. What kind of badness? You're not a molek, you're not midyan, you're a regular klipa. It's the badness of one of the 7 midas. Pardon me. So the char de klipa is a klipa with a force. It's a klipa with a stand. It's a klipa with a trajectory. It wants to take you in a not good place. And ga'ar kana means to cut off its leg, to change that. What about chayas kana? Last line on page Samachtes, the beginning Malchus, the klipa is called chayas kana. What is the klipa of Malchus in these words? Shenasa skupa nidreses v'chulu. One becomes a doormat. So when a person is a klipa, there's two ways a person can be in a not good place. One is they choose to go bad. And the other is they don't care about anything. They just give up. They have no self-control, they have no self-interest, they have no self-worth, and they give it all up. So the masculine klipa fights with the kedusha. The masculine klipa just doesn't fight with anything, goes where it's easier. So you have two different levels of klipa. A klipa which is a proactive ill, and a klipa which is a passive ill, a secondary ill. And ga'ar chayas kana means you have to remove both of them to transform the kuf to a hay. Says the Rebbe, shenase eskupan midreses, one becomes a doormat. V'hu kabbalah seil del yumazeh, which is kabbalah seil bittel in klip. There's a maimed I saw from the Rebbe Rashav and Ayin Beis that it's shayches by klipa to have a lot of bittel. But when klipa has a lot of bittel, it's not principled bittel. It's pashat weakness. It's cowardice. Someone who's a coward also bottle, but it's not bittel. It's the fear of opening his mouth. So the klipa, the feminine klipa, is weakness. The masculine klipa is opposition, is contrariness. The feminine klipa pashat shvach. So the Rebbe says on top of page Ayin v'tzarach liyas ga'ar chayas kana. You have to shout at kana and chayas kana, the masculine klipa and the feminine klipa. You have to take away from klipa its gaiven, its stolz. You have to take away from klipa its patheticness, its weakness. Shetzarach lahacher, it says knei hakuf, and mystically and technically when one fights with the klipa of kuf, whether the kuf's klipa is arrogance, I have my own way, or the klipa is called chayas kana, means I don't have my own way, but I'm weak, I don't have a koyach. So the Rebbe says, when you cut off the right leg of the kuf, nasam is a hey. When you make the two levels the same level, then it becomes a letter hey. Now, I don't want to give you long speeches, not because you're interested, neither because you're interested in my speeches, nor because it's that important. But the Sikha from the Rebbe, on Koirach, Sikha Koirach, there are three variations of a hey. The kuf, the leg is too long, the reish is missing the left leg, and the ches doesn't have a separation. Yeah? The letter hey is the letter of kedusha. As you're going to see in this Maamar, the letter hey is the letter of kedusha because it stands on both feet. But standing on that both feet makes the mamida. It's firm, strong. When you're dealing with standing on one leg, which is what klipa is, it's very, very difficult to stand. And therefore, when you cut the right leg of the kuf, nasam it becomes a hey. For oz who tevas hine, so kana becomes hine, and hine means gili alakus. The hine made al gili, which is gili when you're not kedusha. So when you gar chayas kana, however this is achieved, but it has to do, of course, with iskafia ishapcha, through the avodah that we do with iskafia ishapcha. We bend and transform klipa into kedusha, and we affect it. In the world, it should be in fanamida, atzei shitim oimdim, as we're going to see in the next shiur. So what's the chap? The chap is v'asul limikdash v'shachanti b'seichem is not achieved through holiness. V'asul limikdash v'shachanti b'seichem is achieved through transforming klipa into kedusha. And in this case, it's taking the kuf and making a hay out of it. And taking the kuf and making the hay out of it causes kana to become hine, which means gili alakus. So the Rebbe says 3 lines from the top of page Ayin v'lachein la'asa therefore Mashiach comes that all these galo kol nyon ha'kedusha shebepnimiyas. Godliness is going to be revealed in Eifin of Pnimiyas. We're going to see godliness vividly. And with our own flesh, the Pasuk says, the trademark of Mashiach is Hine and Zeh. Hine means this. Point with your finger. There's going to be a clarity. Right now there's a haze and there's a fog because of Kana, the Chad de Klipa and Nukva de Klipa. And when you cut off the right leg of the kuf and the kuf becomes a hay, now it becomes gili alakus. So Vagi, Lady Allah said, when the idea that Mashiach comes, there's going to be a revelation of Hashem in this world, which is going to be affected. With avoid that we do in Zman goals to change kuf into hey. Who I the achsha depends on what we do nowadays. Or kameish bevayer ba Maamar Basi Legani as the Rebbe explains in the earlier sifim. Umaskir gamke besiv zeberashi prokem says our Rebbe. The previous Rebbe mentions very briefly in his commentary in chapter 1 in this Maamar as well. This is the work of transformation. Now some Maamarim say iskafia. In this Maamar, it's not the first time you see that he's avoiding the word iskafia, he's using only the word ishapcha, and of course everything is very precise for tzarech here. Transforming darkness into light and bitterness to sweetness. You transform klipa. You get of it good and holiness. And this is especially so when there are concealments and tests. One is not affected by this adversely, but to the contrary becomes stronger in the union of making a diraleis barach b'tachtenim through this he transforms to the kedusha. He doesn't only serve Hashem, but he's transforming shtus to shtus the kedusha. And the Rebbe concludes Peidik Vov. This is going to be when Mashiach comes. There's going to be Gili Alakus from the house, like it says. Zeh is written twice. Zeh beis palmim. She has gala b'chinas ani avaya leishanisi. That is going to be a revelation of Amida, which means the level which never changes because on Hashem who never changes. But who aveda the achshav agashmi is nafka. So in this short little Peidik, the Rebbe visits the end of the discussion on Kuf and Reish and Shin, which is how he transformed the Kuf into a Hey through Avodah, through Avodah v'skafia v'ishapcha. And in Mitzvah Shem, in the next Shiur, we're going to learn Prakim Beis through Hey and Zayin through Tes. But these Prakim are not going to focus on the Ga'ar Chayas Koneh, how it continues in the earlier Prakim of transforming Klipa into Kedusha. It's going to focus on the Schar, the idea of Atzashitim Eimdim, Kroshem Eimdim. Ukafi Sheyizbaya Lakaman Mitzvah Shem.